microphone is on.
Okay, and am I coming up on there? Yes.
Yes, you're here, and here's the.
Okay.
I have to bring this up. I have one other thing to bring up. I'll get it up here in a second. All right, we go. Good evening. The July 8th, 2021 Whatcom County Planning Commission meeting is called to order. I'll call the roll. Please let me know if you are here. Robert Bartel.
Here.
Kelvin Barton, that's me. I'm here. Atul Deshmani. Atul Deshmani. Okay. Jim Hampson. Jim Hampson.
Here.
Thank you. Stephen
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
John Mayberry.
Here.
Natalie McClendon.
Here.
Dominic Masseri.
Here.
Gosh, and I forgot Kimberly Lund, and I understand she will not be here. Okay. At this time, please join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Department update. Director Personius, would you give us a department update, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. Happy Thursday. I know you got a packed agenda tonight, so I'll be brief. Just a couple updates for you. The Cherry Point amendments are going to be introduced by County Council next week, July 13th. And we anticipate Council scheduling a public hearing for July 27th on those amendments. So also next week on the 13th, we'll have an introductory briefing with the council on the shoreline management plan update, recommendations that you guys made, and a hearing and decision on the surface mining pipeline buffer amendments will also be on July 13th as well. I think the chair and your secretary Tammy will talk a little bit about this, but we're going to kind of roll out a new protocol for the public comment, open session, and then public hearing protocols tonight. We're trying to get consistent with how the council conducts their meetings, so the public expectations is kind of the same for all of our boards and commissions. So we're going to try to roll that out tonight, a new protocol for that. And the last thing I've got for you, just to let you guys know that we instituted a stage 2 burn ban this week. Countywide, that means ban on all outdoor burns, outdoor fires, including recreational fires due to the heightened dry conditions out there. So please be careful out there when it comes to that. And that's all I've got for you guys, unless you guys have any questions for me.
Commissioner Hanson, I believe, has a question for you. Go ahead, Commissioner Hanson.
Just how is our county ban different than the statewide ban that's already in place?
Very similar, I think. I think we've taken a little bit more detail on outdoor recreational fires, and regarding like grilling activities and things like that. There are certain kinds of fires you can have, and certain ones that you can't. There tend to be propane fires are okay if they're in a pit and so forth, but in general, recreational fires that are on it, are just off the table. The governor's emergency order extends until September 30th, and that includes all agricultural burns as well as debris fires and things like that. So it's pretty comprehensive at this point.
Any other questions for Mark? Right. Thank you, Mark.
All right, you guys have a good meeting. Good night.
Thank you. So this brings us to open session for public comment, and as Director Personius explained, the County Council's been using a format that I think will work well here, but the county is also looking for us to do it similarly across all the boards and commissions. So our Plan Commission Coordinator, Tammy, is going to explain what's going on and how it works. So Tammy, go ahead.
I'm just going to share a screen here real quick for the public. Okay, welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live. The audio is being recorded and will be posted to the county website. Members of the public may join the meeting online or by phone. If you are watching live and wish to join the meeting to speak, please go to the link listed on the screen at this time, which is www.whatcancountY.us/3436/participate-in-virtual-planning-COMMISSI. Instructions on how to join the meeting are also at the bottom of that webpage. During open public comment, speakers may not speak to items that are scheduled on the agenda for a public hearing tonight, or items that have had a public hearing and are still under deliberation by the Planning Commission. Once we start the open public comment session, please virtually raise your hand to request to speak. If using the internet, press the hand icon to raise your hand. If calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. Speakers may be called on by name or based on the last 3 digits of their phone number if that's what shows on the screen. When called on, you'll press the microphone symbol to unmute yourself. If you join by phone, when you hear a message that has that the host has unmuted your phone, please press *6. Please state your full name for the record and direct all comments to the chair. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak, and we will be using an on-screen timer. So this is our first time using that. So they'll just ask for your patience as we switch screens once we start the open public comment session. And staff will announce when your 3-minute speaking time is up if you're not indeed finished before that time. So, a couple of other changes with this is that I will be announcing the speakers in the order that their hands are raised. And if there are multiple speakers, we'll try to name them 3 at a time so that people know when their time is coming up. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you. So, as we said, now is the time, open session for public comment. And so, if you'd like to speak, the directions as per Tammy, let's go ahead. And I am not seeing anybody that from the attendees that would like to speak. So then let's move on to commissioner comments. The commissioners have comments tonight. Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead then and move on to, oh, Sorry. There we
Sorry,
are.
Kelvin.
Good to see you,
I-
Commissioner Desmond. Go ahead.
I'm just commenting that I apologize. I joined late. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. So then let's go ahead and move on to approval of minutes for June 10th and June 24th.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes for June 10th and June 24th.
We have a second.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion, any corrections? Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Abstain, please.
Commissioner Mayberry,
Abstain.
Commissioner McClendon,
Yes.
Commissioner Masseri,
Yes.
Commissioner Barton.
Yes.
That is 6 yeses, 2 abstaining, so that carries.
Okay, so we will now move along to our first topic for the night, and that's the proposed amendments to Whatcom County Title 20 dealing with battery energy storage systems. And Robbie Duckret will be presenting that, and I believe Robbie is going to take the presentation. So Robbie, go ahead.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Robbie Eckroth. I'm with Whatcom County PDS staff. I'm here today to discuss an applicant-driven text amendment, which would allow battery energy storage systems in Whatcom County if approved. Battery energy storage systems are rechargeable battery systems that store energy from the electrical grid and then sell energy back to the energy provider when needed, or they provide energy directly to a home or business. Representatives from NextEra, the applicants, will speak more about the details of this technology next. Currently, battery energy storage systems are not a specified use anywhere in Whatcom County code. So that's why a code amendment is required in order for someone to apply for the use. NextEra originally applied to amend the code to allow battery energy storage systems in the rural zone with conditional use permit approval. As this technology may become more widespread in the near future, staff is proposing to expand upon NextEra's original proposal to accommodate future anticipated battery energy storage systems by allowing the use in several additional zoning districts. Furthermore, staff has proposed performance and use standards for these facilities in order to mitigate impacts to neighboring properties. So now I'd like to give NextEra the chance to present, and will be available to answer any questions that you might have afterward. So, perfect.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. First, I want to start by saying thank you for having us tonight. We appreciate your time. My name is Kelly Wright. I am a project manager with NextEra Energy Resources working in the Pacific Northwest region. I also have our regional director, David Lawler, on standby should he have any comments that he would like to put in here. And I'm going to just go over some of the technology itself and give you guys a little bit of an understanding of what exactly it is. With that, I am going to turn my camera off so that I have better bandwidth and share my screen so that I can give the presentation. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. How about now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. I want to start by saying that battery storage is an important product for grid stability. It's great for capacity support. We here at NextEra Energy Resources, also known as NEAR, are the world's largest generator of renewable energy from the wind and sun, and we are a leader in battery energy storage systems. And therefore, that has earned us a really good reputation in the industry. We do expect that by the end of 2021, we will have exceeded $1 billion in investments in battery storage nationwide. We have hundreds of megawatts that are currently operational, as well as several other projects that are in construction and should be completed by the end of this year or into the shorter parts of 2021. Our current battery storage systems are being used for frequency regulation, which has traditionally been done by fossil power plants, but can now be done more efficiently by battery storage. Also, again, this is used for capacity support. There are several benefits to having this type of a system connected to your grid. The new technology does allow for balanced loading or balanced load, allows energy to deliver instantly. It requires or whatever's required to be delivered instantly. Basically, battery storage can act like a load. So that's meaning it's charging from the grid when electric prices and demand are both low, or it can connect like a generator, meaning that it's pushing electricity back onto the grid when demand and prices are both high. The cool thing that's about battery storage, unlike a power plant, which takes several hours to turn on, battery storage injects electricity in milliseconds, so it's an instant capacity. Standalone BESS facilities serve as backup, so they supply voltage support, frequency support, and can address capacity shortfall for something like a blackout, a rolling blackout, or other types of outages that you may experience. Other benefits are that we don't, or battery storage does not emit greenhouse gases or other pollutants. There's no water necessary for electricity generation, and it is a renewable supply of energy, which the state is, clearly trying to add into their portfolio. Energy storage is safe, it is reliable. We do only get inverters and modules that are UL tested and certified. UL is Underwriters Laboratories. It's a highly credible testing organization that is used by OSHA to provide safety specs as well as to test the products for safety. When we do understand what batteries we are going to be using and what a layout will look like on a site, we provide training based on those modules to the local fire departments and local law enforcement. So it is something that we do try to make sure that everyone that needs to be aware of is aware of. The next thing would be that concerning basically all of these items, we want to make sure that you understand and that we reiterate that we are bound to county codes and requirements. We must meet all of the rules, and we do meet and or exceed those standards once a project takes life. The footprint for a battery storage is generally very small, can be from 1 to 5 acres. There may be some additional acres that require access roads and so forth, but the actual footprint of the storage containers themselves would be between 1 and 5 acres. They have very aesthetic components compared to other renewable energy types, as they are basically the height of the containers that you see that people are making these cool little houses of now. They have really low noise output and are designed to comply with all local, state, and state noise requirements. Just to give you an understanding of how loud they can be, the most noisy component is going to be the inverter or the transformer skids. And typically those are around 60 to 65 dBA at 1 meter or 3 feet, roughly. This does depend on the manufacturer. The batteries themselves don't make noise, but the cooling system will. There is a little HVAC cooling system that makes a little hum as well. And just to give you an idea of what 60 to 65 dBA is, A normal conversation like we're having right now, or like we would be having if we were in a meeting together, is about 60 dBA. So 65 dBA is considered standing next to someone or standing within 3 feet of someone that's laughing. Pretty low. A vacuum cleaner is actually louder than these machines are.
Haley, could you hold just for a moment? I think we have a Commissioner Desmonte. I believe that's a question for you.
Okay.
So what we're doing here is making a change to the code amendments, to code. And so I'm grateful that Nextera has leading technology in this regard. But the question is, what about other possibilities that code amendments would be allowing for? So if I read the package correctly, there is no requirement for noise levels as part of the allowance for these kinds of facilities. So am I missing something, or is there no specification about noise and other, unintended consequences of battery energy storage?
So I am not aware of any stipulations that you currently have on noise control in your code. I'm just trying to provide as much information as I possibly can to give you guys a good idea of what you're looking at and what could possibly be something that comes up from your community.
Yeah, and just on that point, maybe Robbie could say we haven't looked into, because we would have to still apply for a conditional use permit.
Correct.
And we don't know. We would be working, if this text amendment is successful, we'd be then looking to submit a CUP at a future date that would have more detail, including the type of detail you're asking.
Chair, may I follow up?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Desmonte.
It might be constructive and helpful for me to just say that the concerns about battery energy storage, about it being done correctly, are safety, security, sound, I guess potentially hazardous materials, and then location relative to utility infrastructure. And there may be a few others too, but those are the things that I happen to be a commissioner at the Whatcom County PUD too, so I'm trying to benefit from that in terms of this discussion. And I want to just ask about those things, and maybe in your presentation you can try to address some of those points, and not just regards to Nextera's technology, but the industry's technology.
Okay, so I think I did speak on some of those points, and honestly, I can only speak on the technology that we do use for Nextera. So I will continue the slideshow, and then we can get back to answering any other questions that may arise.
Yeah.
Or any further detail. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
At this moment, Haley, why don't we go ahead and hold the questions till Haley's done with her presentation. I think that's what she's suggesting. It's a good idea. Haley, go ahead.
Okay, so the next few slides are really just to give you a visual of what several different battery sites that we currently have look like, and the components within. I want to make sure that you guys know that these are not huge structures, and that they are pretty compatible with the landscape. They are generally located very close to substations, or directly adjacent from them, especially when they're standalone. What I'm thinking that we will be looking at in Whatcom County is something that's similar to this. We're not as close probably to the substation we're not thinking, but we will be relatively close, and this is kind of the size I'm anticipating. And so with that, I do want to be able to open it back up to any questions or hand it back over to Robbie, so that we can kind of go into further detail.
Yeah. Why don't we also, just as we go through, and I forgot which commissioner asked those questions. We tried to address that this, because it would be a conditional use permit in addition to whatever happens with the text amendment, that any state or local requirements would have to be upheld by whomever is the party constructing. And
So maybe my
I
question-
believe, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So maybe this is Commissioner Deshmani. I just wanted to say that perhaps my question is more to staff than to Nextera then.
Sure. So I can speak to your question regarding noise. So within several zoning districts, with the exception of the industrial zoning districts, we have proposed a performance standard that the facility shall comply with state noise levels under chapter 17360 in the WAC. So it also requires that the applicant provides detail about the expected noise level and any proposed abatement measures. So that's something that we would look through the permit review process, and it would also be addressed through SEPA review as an impact as well.
Chair, may I continue with the other items?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about fire safety? If you don't mind me going through the list, fire safety, what about that?
So our fire marshal will be reviewing every single one of these proposals. There is an entire chapter in the IFC, or the International Fire Code, dedicated to battery energy storage systems as of 2018. So that is something that we would address through the review process. I believe that these systems do have specific technology for fire suppression, and if NextEra wants to speak to that, I'd be happy to hear that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Yes, they do, including a lot of technology going into the structure itself. You saw that these are all in enclosures. That enclosure is fire resistant. There's HVAC and fire suppression systems within the containers. And finally, certainly one of the technologies we've been using most lately is actually it once it reaches a certain temperature, it basically melts on itself. And so there is a lot of work going into these, and we'd be reviewing any of those and all of them with the fire marshal as we go through a CUP.
Okay, can I switch to the next topic, site security? So these facilities
Certainly.
are not manned 24/7. How do you keep the battery energy storage site secure? Because it's a lethal place. So,
well, same as a substation yard that is also not manned, right?
Yes.
It would be fenced with the proper security fencing, including barbed wire or other type of wire on top. We have only card lock entry, and we have cameras on most, it's not all, but most of our battery energy storage systems. We commonly refer to them as BESS.
okay, and then hazardous materials containment?
Yeah, it's the same as in a substation. It's the container itself. Those containers are, both fire resistant as well as contained. And that is the system. And then you have transformers, the same as in a substation. And those are, depending on state and local rules, would be secondary contained for the oil that those transformers have.
Okay, and then the last item was location relative to other infrastructure. Utility infrastructure, setbacks from other ignition sources and so on and so forth. So.
I believe
Yeah.
that's, if you don't mind, David, I think that's
Yeah.
something that the fire marshal would be looking into. I know that there are standard setbacks within the IFC to other structures, vegetation, and likely other infrastructure as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you addressed my questions.
Commissioner McClendon, go ahead.
Well, I think maybe you answered some of my questions. Basically, my question is, how is any of these issues of security, noise or light pollution or hazardous materials or other kinds of impact to the environment, to the neighborhood, how do they differ from a substation or other similar electrical facilities that we already permit?
Very little, if not actually, than a substation that has larger transformers. I would say actually has less of those materials and less of an impact.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bartel.
All right. Has anybody asked PSE what their take is on these, whether they're encouraging them or not? I generally believe this is a piece of the puzzle for the future grid and smart grid. So I think it's something that's going to be needed for sure. But I was wondering what PSE's take is, and if NextEra has agreements with PSE or has spoken with them.
Yes, we can answer that. We have spoken with them, and actually battery energy storage systems are part of their upcoming RFP that for procurement of energy resources. And yeah, so we've talked with them several times. They are encouraging these BESSes at certain locations within their grid. And this is one of those, your county and general area, some of the infrastructure in and around the county are part of that discussion.
Commissioner McClendon.
This is actually more curiosity than related to our decision tonight, but what is your long-term business plan in terms of placing storage units around? Are you looking at kind of putting them conveniently all over?
The answer is we've honed in on a particular substation, and we'll go into more detail when we actually apply for our CUP. We're still crossing some T's, dotting some I's with some landowners and with PSE for that matter. And so they're more strategic than just sort of random. If you could look at a grid, particularly when you talk to some of the utilities, they'll have pinch points, so to speak, or congestion points. And, these types of systems become more valuable to them in certain areas. And so we try to work with, from a commercial perspective, we're trying to meet that need so that we can gain a contract with, in this case, probably PSE.
Commissioner Mayberry.
Yeah, all throughout both staff's comments as well as the presentation, they referred to storage in megawatts. I think of that as service capacity. Is there an actual storage capacity of kilowatt hours that we're going to cap? Or I would think that would make sense to put in the text, because 5 megawatts is a lot for service capacity, but there's really no mention of the actual storage.
I'm not sure, Robbie, but yeah, I mean, if you think about substations in the flow, you're correct, but we are thinking in megawatt hours, and there's different amount of value that certain utilities find in whether you have a 2 hour, so you have X number of megawatts at 2 hours, and then you just times it, and that creates megawatt hours which is 1,000 times a kilowatt hour. And utilities do think in megawatts and megawatt hours. They don't, to smaller commercial retail customers, they think in kilowatt hours. That's what we pay in. But in the, if you're connecting into one of their substations, they do think in megawatt hours. And so that's why we are talking megawatts.
Yeah, I guess my point is, without having a limit on megawatt hours, there's really no limit on the size of the battery storage. So
I wrote, oh, if you don't mind, I wrote the code the way that I did after doing research, and the way that these are typically measured are in megawatts, and I mainly referred to the megawatts because in the rural zone, we're proposing as a conditional use that battery energy storage systems can exceed 5 megawatts, as these systems, from what I've researched, require that you be near a substation if you exceed 5 megawatts of storage capacity. And that's the only zone that we're allowing that, with the exception, or proposing to allow that, with the exception of the industrial zoning districts. Every other zone would be limited to 5 megawatts and below with an administrative approval use. And while I'm on that topic, we did some research and we found that there are only 6 substations in the rural zone in Whatcom County. So there's only a possibility that you could see 6 of these, or I guess not technically 6, but there are only 6 substations for these to be built near in Whatcom County in the rural zoning district.
yeah, I just want to be clear. I'm not opposed to this at all. I think it's great. I just want to know what we're talking about. So is it 5 megawatts for a day, or is it for 5 seconds? What's the actual capacity of the battery storage?
David, do you mind speaking to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, the answer is that we haven't applied for anything yet. If we are talking, as I was talking about, so let's take hypothetically a similar peaking plant that would be 100 megawatts that you could generate in any given hour, 100 megawatts. Most of these systems don't become economic beyond 4 hours. So if you had 100 megawatt, you'd have 400 megawatt hours total storage within the system. And again, the size is also governed by all the other rules, both within the planning and in the text amendment, including things like setbacks, 35% coverage of the land of which you have. There might even be some landscaping and other items that are in the code. So the sizing, in a sense, as we showed in the pictures, the sizing would still be a lot smaller than the substation it's connecting to.
Commissioner Bartel, did you have additional questions? Go ahead, please.
I did. I was wondering on the 1 mile, being within 1 mile, is that just kind of a formality to actually add that to the code? I mean, practically, would you really ever be further than a mile from the substation is one question. And then the other question, I was doing a little research on this and I saw PSE already has one in Glacier and they use it as backup power. I was wondering, has the county had any input on that? Are the residents having any problems, or do they appreciate having a backup power source there?
So we chose that mile standard just to make sure that they're staying close to the battery energy or to the substation and limit where they can go at that size. We did review the Glacier battery energy storage back in 2015 as a public utility. I don't know if there is any feedback about those systems, but I know that we haven't really received any complaints as a department.
Commissioner McClendon.
So on the size issue, I mean, my understanding is this is, the purpose is to provide for backup during peak load. Is that essentially correct?
There's,
So, it wouldn't be economically logical to have a size that's bigger than, I mean, you've analyzed what your, as you said, your pinch point and what your peaks are. I mean, it's just like if you're gonna build a gas-fired plant as a peaking station, it's a certain size because you figured out what you need. You're not gonna build it bigger than what you need. Okay.
no,
I mean, so I guess I'm not concerned about you suddenly deciding to put gigantic stacks and stacks of these things somewhere. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other commissioners with questions? And Robbie, do you have more to present to us?
I do not.
Okay, so it would be time now to have a public hearing. And I'm going to let Tammy talk about public hearing and getting logged in here by the public.
Okay. First, I guess we will ask, are there any attendees who would like to speak to this item? It would be for the first item only for the public hearing. Okay, I don't see any hands raised.
I am
If you do wish to speak, it is *9 or the hand icon on your computer. No hands are
please
raised.
sit there, and the public hearing is open for any of you that would like to speak. Anyone like to speak? So I'm seeing no hands come up, so we will close the public hearing. So, Robbie, is there any more that you would like to present to us? Bring up.
Not at this time, but I'm open for more questions if there are any.
If that would be appropriate, Commissioner, questions for Robbie? Commissioner Mayberry.
I guess just to finish this off, what is the typical megawatt hour capacity of one of your battery stations?
So I'm guessing you're asking NextEra.
Yes.
there isn't really typical, but we were thinking in your region, giving the assessment, it's about 100 megawatts, likely a 4-hour duration battery. So a total of 400 megawatt hours total, being able to push to the grid over a 4-hour period.
Thanks.
Other commissioners have questions? So, Commissioner Bartel.
So I definitely appreciate where NextEra is going, and I can also see, it makes sense to go ahead and allow them to do this, but I do have concerns with, who else might want to do this, and are they going to be at the same level of, care, professionalism, whatever it is, in the equipment that they're installing. So that's one part of it. And then also where we're allowing these, and I guess question for staff might be, can we do this as a pilot project maybe and allow them and then study it? Would that make sense? Or are you pretty firm that this is the right choice and move forward with this today?
Cliff or Robbie, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, Cliff, this is a little more procedural. Do you want to speak to this?
Sure. So I'm getting the sense that some of the commissioners might think that that amending the code as such would allow them to go in. It doesn't. It just allows somebody to apply for a permit. So when we anticipate the NextEra will apply for a permit in the next few months, or once this is if this is approved. But if somebody else were to come in, they would have to go through the permitting process as well, either a CUP or an admin permit, and meet the same standards. Does that answer your question, Mr. Bartel? Okay.
Commissioner Mayberry.
It's I guess a question for Cliff or maybe Robbie. Is there anything prohibiting homeowners from having their own battery backups by doing this?
I think we would look at those a little differently, a little bit more like a generator, or like a business or something like that. And again, they still have to comply with the fire code. If something clearly was not just to back up someone's home, which I believe is a standard for a lot of solar systems now too, is to have some of these batteries for residences. If there was something that was clearly beyond the scope of that, we would have them be subject to these standards.
Yeah, we fully anticipate that more and more homes and businesses will have these. But if it's just supporting their own business or home, that would be covered by our building division with the rules that Robbie mentioned earlier in the building codes.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Bartel.
I think I'm satisfied. I would move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And, sorry, just procedural for a minute here. And I'll ask Cliff. Cliff, was there a finding of fact along with this that needed approval?
They're found in the staff report. So as usual, a motion might be that you forward it to the county council as shown in Exhibit A with the recommendation of approval based on the findings of facts and conclusions in the staff report.
Second.
My motion is that.
Commissioner Bartel, are you okay with amending your motion to include the finding of facts?
Absolutely. Just like Cliff said, perfect. Couldn't have said better myself.
Yeah, let's see, who was the second on that? Commissioner Desmani, are you okay with that?
Yes, despite Cliff's shirt.
It goes with the room.
You have that. I've asked Tammy if she could read it back to us. So.
Okay, I think it was this part right here. Move to forward to county council the proposed amendments for approval as shown in Exhibit A with the recommendation of, based on the findings of fact and conclusions provided in the staff report.
Commissioner Hanson, go ahead.
I'm going to abstain on this because I realize I'm a stockholder in this company.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there any other discussion on the motion? Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Desmani,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson abstains, Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayberry,
Yes.
Commissioner McClendon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mosseri.
Yes.
Yes.
That is 7 yeses, 1 abstaining, so it is 8-1, and that carries. Or I guess just 8.
Yes.
Or I mean 7 and it carries. I'm sorry. You should have.
So we are moving on to proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan and the Nooksack.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Before you move on, I just wanted to explain that this was Robbie's first project. He volunteered to because he wanted to know how long-range planning worked and how to get to the planning commission and council. And you guys did a great job of keeping him on his toes. So thank you.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you, Robbie.
All right, we're going to take off then.
So we'll move on to the next one then, and that's the amendment, proposed amendment for Nooksack Falls Enclave. And that will be Josh Fleischman will be presenting that. So Josh, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to do a screen share with the PowerPoint really quick. It's not at the beginning. All right, we see the PowerPoint okay?
Yes.
All right. So here today to talk about PLN 2020-00004. It's the Nooksack Falls Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment and a Zoning Code Amendment. So I want to give you a little bit of background about the Nooksack Falls exclave. It is a privately owned land within the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, which includes the Nooksack Falls. It has historically been associated with mining claims and hydroelectric power, though mining activities on and near the property ceased 50 plus years ago. In 1972, there an interim designation of mineral resource lands was continually renewed as an interim ordinance until Ordinance 1999-013 formally designated this land as mineral resource land with a rural forestry underlying zone. So here's a map of the site as well as the vicinity. You can't really see it through here, but the Nooksack, North Fork of the Nooksack comes down through this portion of the property and continues on here to the east or to the west, is joined by Wells Creek, and then Nooksack Falls is right about under the last half of the word forestry. Over here you can see where it is in relationship to Glacier and Mount Baker, Artist Point, Mount Baker Highway. It's roughly halfway between Glacier and the WashDOT station right there by Hannigan Pass. So the proposed amendment is to amend the comprehensive plan map, changing the comprehensive plan designation from mineral resource land to rural forestry. As I said, the subject property is presently zoned rural forestry, and this amendment would align the designation and the zoning. There's also a zoning text amendment to amend the Whatcom County Code 2042-155 to include the Nooksack Falls exclave as an area where a conditional use permit application may be submitted for facilities intended to provide education related to forestry, natural resources, and wildlife, and the purpose of the rural forestry zone. So there are certain comprehensive plan amendment criteria that must be met in order for approval. These are to conform with the requirements of Growth Management Act, to be internally consistent with countywide planning policies, and consistent with interlocal planning agreements. Studies made or accepted by Planning and Development Services must show changed conditions that show the need for the amendment, that the public interest will be served by approving the amendment, and that it does not include or facilitate illegal spot zoning. So in regards to approval criteria for conformance with the requirements of the Growth Management Act, Growth Management Act requires us to designate mineral resource lands that have long-term commercial significance for the extraction of minerals. Within the comprehensive plan, we have mineral resource land designation criteria. And if a property does not meet all of these designation criteria, de-designation is appropriate. We also, the subject site does not appear to meet the designation criteria necessary for designation as mineral resource lands of long-term commercial significance. The proposal must be internally consistent with countywide planning policies and interlocal planning agreements. Staff did not identify countywide planning policies that would be applicable to the change in comprehensive plan designation from mineral resource lands to rural forestry, and staff are not aware of any interlocal agreements affecting the subject site. Studies made or accepted by Planning and Development Services must show changed conditions that show the need for the amendment. So the site was identified for designation through a 1972 interim zoning ordinance due to its historic mining operations. The interim The interim designation was formally adopted in 1999. Mining has not occurred on or around the site in 50+ years, as mining is no longer feasible within the exclave due to economic, environmental, topographic, or other factors. We must show that the public interest will be served by approving the amendment. There would be no effect upon the rate or distribution of population growth. It would provide the opportunity for future uses such as demonstration forests and conservation laboratories, education facilities, and related uses, including lodging structures, cooking and dining facilities, retail sales, or meeting supplies and gifts, and other improvements related to access and safety to Nooksack Falls. There is no anticipated effect on the ability of service providers to provide adequate services and public facilities, and there is no anticipated impact upon resource lands. The site is presently and would continue to be zoned rural forestry. The amendment does not, we must show that the amendment does not include nor facilitate illegal spot zoning. Spot zoning is a zoning action by which a smaller area is singled out of a larger area or distinct and specially zoned for a use classification totally different from and inconsistent with the classification of surrounding land. Rather than singling out a smaller area from a larger area, the proposal appears to correct a previous designation that was inconsistent with the existing zoning and surrounding land uses. The proposal would result in a rural forest designation surrounded by the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. In order to approve a zoning code criteria, it must be consistent with the comprehensive plan. The amendment would allow landowners to apply for conditional use permits to operate facilities intended for education related to forestry, natural resources, and wildlife, and the purpose of the rural forestry zone, and it is supported by policies 8G8, 2L4, and 2FF-4. So in conclusion, the subject amendment is consistent with the approval criteria of Whatcom County Code, actually says 2, but 2.10.060, and staff recommends approval of the proposed comprehensive plan map and zoning text amendment. That was it. Do you have any questions?
Before we get into questions, I just want to make sure that we have our public hearing and I'll start off having a discussion about it also. So if there's a couple factual things you didn't understand rather than would it do this or would it do that, if there was something you missed that would be appropriate for Josh, but then we'll have our public hearing and then we can go back to having Josh speak with Josh about it. So I have not seen any hands up, so I'm going to go ahead and open public hearing. And so, Tammy, I don't think anybody has arrived, newly arrived for this, but just in case, Tammy, you see anybody there that.
No, Ellie was here before. She's the one who has the hand raised, so I'm just going to get the clock going and then I will call on you. Okay. Oh, where did she go? I lost her.
There
we go. So Allie, I'm going to click the allow to talk button and you can go ahead and unmute your phone if you would like to speak to this topic.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ollie Taishi. I'm working with Arch Westford, who is the owner of the Nooksack Falls Exclave property. And I just like, first of all, I'd like to speak briefly to the proposal. First, I'd like to thank staff for the staff report and the presentation. I think the staff report is very thorough. It's consistent with our application materials and supports the proposal. Really, this is about changed circumstances. Mining is no longer a viable activity at this site. As Josh showed you on the aerial photo, almost the entire 60-acre claim is running along the Nooksack River and Wells Creek, and the environmental constraints that exist in our shoreline codes and in other environmental codes really preclude commercially viable mining. And so when you juxtapose that changed circumstance against the recreation value that this property provides to our county and our community, I think it's very clear that this is an appropriate proposal. This area is the gateway to Mount Baker National Forest, the ski area. There's an immense amount of recreation that occurs in the summer. We have DOT data that shows that there's literally tens of thousands of trips annually that stop and come and visit Nooksack Falls. If you've never been there, it's an amazing place, and it's privately owned. And Arch Westford, the property owner, has always maintained an open door policy. There's no fees to come visit this beautiful natural phenomenon in our county, and he encourages use of the site. However, he does have to carry a very expensive insurance policy, and he has to provide fencing and other safety measures. And what we'd like to do is remove this mineral resource overlay, return the zoning to rural forestry, and provide the opportunity for Arch to explore improvements at the site through the conditional use permit process to enhance the public access, create safer access, potentially create educational facilities or revenue generating facilities at the site, which will help him to maintain this as a public amenity for free. In order to do that, we need to go through this process. I would like to note that as with the prior proposal that I heard the commission speak about, any of these activities that would occur would require a conditional use permit, which means that there would be public notification, public hearing with the hearing examiner, and participation. So this rezone doesn't change any underlying or doesn't permit any underlying use. It just provides the opportunity for us to request that use. And so I think that's very important. And in closing, I would just add that in addition to the specific comp plan policies that Josh referenced, this is broadly consistent with the comp plan: environmental preservation, sustainability, recreation, tourism, economic development, all of these things in our comp plan that we support. So in closing, I'd like to ask the commission to support the proposal as it's presented and give us the opportunity to move forward with some interesting improvements at the falls. Thank you for your time.
So are there any other attendees that would like to speak? I'm only seeing one, and that's Lee, who's already spoke. So with that, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, what would you like to do? Do you have questions for staff? Commissioner Mayberry.
Yeah, it's just a question for Josh. In our last, maybe it was one before that, can't remember now. Did we recommend the council expand the mineral resource designation around this site as well?
No, this site was not listed or was not identified as a potential resource area within the previous geotechnical studies. It's 7 miles from its most likely end use. One of the things about mineral resources is they make the most sense being located near their end use due to the cost of trucking. It's also an extremely limited site, so it wasn't part of the consideration for mineral resource land designation through the countywide review.
Sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to remove this and then end up with everything within a half a mile around it. Okay.
Commissioner McClendon.
Well, it looks pretty logical that it's not a mineral resource of commercial value. I am kind of surprised that the suggestion that having that designation is limiting their ability now to improve safety and build even a single building. Can you speak to that, Josh?
So the property is actually zoned rural forestry through the 1999 ordinance. Usually when we have mineral resource lands, you may not have remembered, but at a previous meeting, we discussed what actually protects the resource. Mineral resource land designation in and of itself does not protect the resource. It is the zoning code which implements the protections for mineral resource land. So this doesn't actually have the mineral resource zoning overlay, so they couldn't mine consistent with the Surface Mining Act right now. They're zone rural forestry, so anything within our rural forestry zone anything within our rural forestry zone they could apply to do right now. They are proposing a zoning code amendment to a specific section of the code that would include the Nooksack Falls exclave, as well as, to be within an area where certain conditional use permit applications could be submitted, similar to what is allowed within the Baker Lake exclave, as well as the Nehalem exclave.
Okay.
Commissioner Gasmani.
So, what other doors will this leave open for the owner of the property now that if we change it to forestry? What other possibilities besides a building, an educational center, and so on and so forth that's identified would we be opening up for the property holder?
Sure, so I can, really nothing. That would be the only new thing. Everything that our zoning code allows for rural forestry right now, they would continue to be able to do in the future. The only thing that is changing is the section of code 2042 155. So, I mean, I can bring up the zoning code really quick and just kind of show you, generally speaking, the things that are allowed within the rural forestry zone. And those are things that are allowed right now. They could apply for any of these things. If you care to just peruse the code, I can bring it up on the screen.
I think your explanation that all the same things that are currently allowed would be allowed is sufficient for me.
Okay.
Commissioner Hanson.
This might go back to 1999, but it's sort of odd to me that something that is embedded into the national forest wouldn't be straight up forestry rather than rural forestry. I think the National Forest does a good job managing its recreational resources. And to me, this seems like it's introducing the potential for a commercial enclave within the National Forest. And again, and also, is there any harvestable timber in this area that would be zoned rural forestry, or is it just a bunch of riparian area? Where's the forestry here? Where's the jobs?
So, I mean, there's certainly, it's a forested area, as I showed in the site map, but it's primarily forested. And if you've been out there, you've seen that it is primarily forested. It's the type of activity that would likely be, just thinking of typical forestry, that's the type of forestry that would be regulated by the Department of Natural Resources as a class 3. If they were to look at converting the property to cut down the trees, to pull the stumps, to grade it, and to do any sort of development, that would come through our code. And our code would limit clearing within shoreline jurisdiction, or that shoreline buffer of 150 feet. It would limit clearing around any wetlands, streams, anything like that. So, it is an odd shaped, collection of parcels with, major waterways going through it. It certainly you wouldn't expect 100 or all 66 acres to be clear cut, just because of the limiting realities on the ground. There's a hydroelectric power plant on the ground. There's a dwelling unit on the site on one of the parcels. So that's part of the reason I believe it was originally zoned rural forestry. And again, it's zoned rural forestry right now. They're not proposing to change it to rural forestry. So in some regards, it is different than how Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest would manage their forest, which would be for commercial forestry.
Commissioner Mayberry.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it is going to be under a conditional use for development. So I wouldn't be too worried about anything too large and crazy. happening in there.
And the rural forestry zone just does limit the ability to clear a property. Under normal circumstances, no more than 20% of the property could be converted from forestry. Through a conditional use permit, there is an allowance to clear up to 35%, but no more than 35% of a parcel could be cleared. So they're not going to clear the entire thing and put up, you know, whatever they may want. They would be limited to, at most, 35%. And some of that 35% is already taken up by, you know, the clearing associated with the hydropower station and single family dwelling.
Commissioner Hampton.
I think Natalie put her hand up first, or she hasn't been heard from since I have previously.
Commissioner McClendon, go ahead.
Thanks, Jim. I just wanted to say, I see no danger of any clear cutting here. The value of the property is in its natural beauty in association with the falls. And I mean, if you haven't been there, how many people on the commission have not been to Nooksack Falls? I mean, Jim, you have or you haven't?
No, I have been.
Okay.
Okay, so
I was asking who hadn't. Because, I mean, this is where you go when you can't get any farther because of the snow in the winter. So yeah, this makes perfect sense to me.
Commissioner Hanson.
I just wondered whether the conditional use process would include consultation with the Native Nations. It'd be quite probable that there may be sacred sites on this property. They're often associated with waterfalls and pools. And I don't know if they've been consulted about this will but I'm just somewhat concerned that anything might happen that would disrupt their access to sacred sites. And will that be covered in a conditional use permit application?
So we have not consulted with them. We did receive comment in regards to the SEPA threshold determination asking for consultation. Multiple emails were sent and we did not receive, after an initial response saying that they had some general questions for us, we responded answering those questions, looking to set up a time to meet. Multiple emails, subsequent emails did not yield a response. We also reached out to the State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, both via phone and email. We received no response from them in regards to what consultation may look like. So at this moment in time, we have not had the opportunity to consult with them. They did have concerns about culturally sensitive, its cultural significance to the Lummi Nation. Through the conditional use permit, notice does go out to surrounding landowners. It may require SEPA depending on what is proposed. And through that SEPA process, they would have the opportunity to provide comment.
Commissioner Mayberry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's great that the landowner has allowed the public to access this for so long without any fees. And I think we should continue to encourage that. So this makes a lot of sense to me and I'll be supporting it.
Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, just to clarify, so it's been stated that, this doesn't change any of their allowed uses because we're not changing their zoning, right? There's still going to be rural forestry. There's specific areas that are mentioned under this conditional uses. So are rural forestry areas outside of this not able to apply for these conditional uses? Because at one point it was stated that they already can do this. So I just want to clarify why specifically adding them here changes what they can or can't do.
Yeah, so generally speaking, all of the uses in the rural forestry zone, other than, this particular one, which calls out, these facilities within these exclaves. So, 2042, 050, 100, 130, all the permitted accessory administrative approval or other conditional use permit applications or uses can be done by this property. This specific section of code references these facilities within those exclaves. And presently, this is zone rural forestry, but it's not identified as one of the exclaves that would allow for these uses, similar to how the Nehalem exclave and the Baker Lake exclave could apply for them. So the only thing that's changing, it would be this specific use. Everything else, they, as well as the rural forest lands on Squalica Mountain, or between rural zones and commercial forestry zones, which is kind of the buffer that the rural forestry land provides to prevent development right up next to commercial forestry land. All of those areas, the uses are the same, other than this section of code for this property.
Commissioner Jackson.
Thanks. I think that I agree with Commissioner Mayberry. This seems like a really good use of person's private property, and I look forward to seeing what the landowner does with the property in the future. So I will support it.
So we're hearing a lot of support. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend this amendment to the council along with the findings of fact.
And I'll second that.
Hold on a moment. Tammy is writing here. You want to read that now?
Chair, the motion is that we recommend this to council for approval along with the findings of fact.
Commissioner Hanson, go ahead.
Well, I tend to think that this is a good opportunity to square things up and tend to be supportive of it, but I would warn Josh that if the nation asks for consultation and then they don't respond to your emails, that doesn't constitute consultation. I've had to try to get permits through Lummi Cultural before, and a lot of times they'll just blow us off. Then to them, that means no. It doesn't mean yes that they don't respond. It means no when they don't respond. And you might consider driving out there and trying to get an in-person meeting with them. This may not be important enough, and there may be no blowback, but I just want to warn you that no communication does not mean yes.
Any other discussion? Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Grismani,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Hanson,
Abstain.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayberry,
Yes.
Commissioner McClendon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mosseri,
Yes.
Commissioner Barton.
Yes.
That's 7 yeses, 1 abstaining, that carries.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
So now we are up to the proposed amendment to Washington County Title 20 to modify density credits chapter. And Matt Ahmed, was you going to do the presentation? Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, can you see my slide without the notes on it?
I am seeing density credit, lot size, zoning code documents and then Whatcom County Planning Development Services presentation in
Okay.
July. And
Good.
I don't.
All right, thanks. So for the record, my name is Matt Ahmet, representing Planning and Development Services. And today we're going to be talking about recommendations from the TDR PDR multi-stakeholder work group, some proposed density credit code amendments, and proposed small lot code amendments. So the County Council adopted a policy in the 2016 comprehensive plan that included convening a work group to examine a variety of transfer of development right, or TDR, and purchase of development right, or PDR issues. So in February 2017, the county executive appointed 14 members to the work group representing a variety of interests. And this is a list of the members. So the group met 15 times between March of 2017 and October 2018. And the work group issued their final report in October of 2018. Expanding the density credit program was the highest priority identified by the work group. And the work group provided less emphasis, or placed less emphasis on transfer of development rights. So what is a density credit program? First of all, it's a voluntary incentive program. So if a landowner or developer does not want to participate, they can simply develop at the current zoning. Secondly, it's a method for developers to acquire density bonuses or other incentives in designated areas without the need to rezone property. So the program has built-in incentives. And finally, it would supplement existing funding for preservation of ag, rural, forestry, and environmentally sensitive areas, as any funds raised through the density credit program would go to the county's existing conservation easement program, which was known as the Purchase of Development Right program. So backing up a little bit, in late 2017, the County Council approved the first density credit zoning code provisions in County Code 20.91. So at that time, some of you may remember, in the Birch Bay Resort Commercial Zone, a landowner could potentially increase density for single family residential development from 7 units per acre to 14 units per acre through the PUD process if they purchased density credits. And the County Council passed a separate ordinance setting the cost of one density credit, one unit, at $4,000. So the county has kind of already started down this density credit path. The work group recommended expanding the existing density credit program to the urban residential zone in the Birch Bay urban growth area. And they also recommended expanding the program to accessory dwelling units. So let's take a look at the proposed code amendments for density credits. So the work group report states that the urban residential 4 dwelling per acre, or UR4 zone in the Birch Bay UGA should be considered for an increase in density through this program. And the Birch Bay UGA is shown in purple here, and the UR4 zoning is shown in red. And UR4 has about 1,775 acres in the UGA, but as you can see, some of that's already been developed. So the standard density in the UR4 is 4 dwellings per acre, and the proposal is to increase this to 5 dwelling units per acre if density credits are purchased. So for example, if someone had a 20-acre parcel, they could normally have a maximum of 80 dwelling units in the UR4 zone. If the county allowed an increase to 5 units per acre with density credits, they could increase that from 80 to 100 units. So if a developer paid $4,000 per unit for 20 units, it would be $80,000 to the conservation easement program. And if they don't want to do this, they simply develop at the existing zoning of 4 dwellings per acre. So the program is entirely voluntary. Okay, moving on to accessory dwellings. ADUs are currently limited to 1,248 square feet in the zoning code. And so the TDR PDR work group recommends increasing the size limit to 500 square feet to a maximum of 1,748 if density credits are purchased. And this would apply in urban and rural zones. And then the other part of the proposal is the small lot amendments, separate from the density credits. So the State Department of Commerce published a housing memorandum called Issues Affecting Housing Availability and Affordability in June of 2019. And this document identifies what they call reasonable measures as tools for increasing housing availability and affordability. And one of those reasonable measures is to modify land use regulations to move to smaller lot sizes. And specifically, it encourages local governments to adopt lot sizes of 5,000 square feet or less in single family areas. So under the proposed amendments, the minimum lot size in the UR4 zone, the UR4 zone with density credits, which could be developed at 5 units per acre, and the UR6 zone would all be 5,000 square feet or less. And throughout the code, there's a distinction between kind of the conventional subdivision and the cluster divisions. So in summary, the proposal would not take away, any existing landowner rights. It would provide an option for landowners to increase single-family density in the Birch Bay UR4 zone. It would provide an option for landowners to increase the size of accessory dwelling units and potentially provide supplementary funding to the county's conservation easement program to preserve farmland, forest, and environmentally sensitive areas for future generations. And as a separate item, it would also reduce the lot sizes and make some other changes in the UR4 zone to provide greater flexibility for landowners and developers. So that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, we try to address those.
Thank you, Matt. So we need to have a public hearing on this in just a few minutes. And so if commissioners can limit your questions to things not about impacts, but about the proposal itself. If you didn't understand something that had down there, and then we'll go have a public hearing, and then we can go back to asking questions on that. Commissioner Desmonte, go ahead.
Yes, my question is a clarifying question, Chair. And the question I'd like to clarify is, I think Matt said that these funds, that he used the term potentially. Why did you say potentially be used for?
If the program is used, the funds would go to the conservation easement program. It's just potential because if nobody uses it, then there'd be no funds generated.
Thank you for that. That answers the question.
Commissioner Hampton.
Well, Matt, I was curious as what you meant by taking away landowner rights. I didn't think we could take away landowner rights. And is that to imply that stricter regulations or down zones or steps like that are somehow infringing on landowner rights?
I wasn't trying to imply. I'm just saying, this gives options. It's an incentive thing. It's not taking away anybody's ability to develop the land as the current code allows. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'm in support of it because I'm for greater density in areas where we can cluster people together.
So, Commissioner, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And any attendees, anybody listening in on phone, if you would like to speak, I'm not seeing any attendees, but if there's anybody there logging in, I am seeing nothing, so I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Okay. Commissioners, go ahead. Any questions you have, clarifications for Matt? Commissioner McClendon.
So I have a couple of things. On page 2 of the Exhibit B, that's got the chart. I'm confused about. So it says under UR4 with public sewer and water, stormwater, you have a maximum gross density of 4 dwelling units per acre. But then you have a minimum, they're changing the minimum lot size to 5,000 square feet. If I've done my calculations correctly, an acre divided into 4 is 10,000 plus square feet each. What's the point of having a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet if you can only have 4 units per acre?
Because there could be wetlands on the site. I mean, maybe 3/4 of the site is taken up by wetlands, and then you have roads and, you know, you have stormwater facilities. So sometimes those things all kind of crowd out. You might not be able to get the maximum yield of lots if you have larger lot sizes, because other things may, you know, take up space on the land,
Okay, all right, that makes sense. My only other question is, in Birch Bay, I worry about.
Natalie, you just, on my screen, you just froze. I didn't just hear what you just said.
Well, do you have me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever we're talking about encouraging building in Birch Bay, I worry about encouraging people building or increasing density in the low-lying areas that are in the 100-year floodplain, but also, you know, in the in danger of being inundated in the next 50 to 100 years anyway. It looked like on the map that this doesn't apply to the central part of Birch Bay. Is that correct? And
That's
there any low-lying areas that are part of this UR4?
I threw the flood map on the other day. There's very small portions of this that are in the floodplain. It's kind of unlike the other resort commercial proposal that you addressed, Planning Commission addressed in 2017. A lot of that was in the floodplain. So we addressed that in the code. In this instance, it was very small areas of undevelopable land or undeveloped land that were in the floodplain. So we didn't think it was a big issue.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Mayberry.
Yeah, it's just more of a general question about how the density credit program works. Is it required to balance out? Is it running at a deficit or a surplus as far as the funds that are in it?
Well, there's been no use of the density credit program so far. So there's a conservation future tax that the county collects every year, and then they match that a lot of times with you know, federal and state funding, and then they go out and, you know, purchase development rights in rural, ag, and environmentally sensitive areas. I don't know what the balance is. I don't know if Mark, if you have a better handle on that.
I don't think Mark's here.
Oh, he's not on. Okay. I would have to, I don't know. You know, they can't spend money they don't have. So.
Yeah, I guess to me, if the goal is to move densities from the county to more concentrated urbanish areas, it would make more sense to have it be market driven and a one-to-one. Sorry, it's forklift going by. More sense to have it market driven and a one-to-one type of a scenario, to where one credit is purchased and then one is sold. So I'd be interested in seeing that data, because if without credits being purchased, we're not really solving the problem that we're after.
Well, yeah, I mean, you won't be able to buy a you know, a density in rural for $4,000. You'd have to jack it up. I don't know what the prices, the going prices these days. I need to talk to our PDR people, but if you put it too high, then nobody's going to use it, right? And so the intent is just, this is just kind of a little boost to the conservation easement program. Hopefully it would do two things at the same time. One is, you know, increase the density in the Birch Bay UGA, and then provide a little extra funding, you know, to remove these development rights from ag and rural and you know, forestry areas. So it's, you know, to do a one-to-one would probably mean that nobody would use the program because it's just too expensive to get another development right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just, again, I'd be curious as to the how the program's working and actually getting densities out of the ag and rural zone.
Yeah, you know, it might be at some point, maybe Becky could do a presentation on the conservation easement program. You're talking about the program, the overall program where we take in taxes and purchase development rights.
Correct. I guess it, I mean, the if this program were to work ideally, it would balance out, right? The funds coming in from to the county for the purchase of density credits would then be used to purchase development rights where we don't want development at. So
I don't think we're ever going to reach that 1-to-1 ratio. This is just kind of a supplemental funding that goes with the main funding source is conservation futures tax matched by federal or state funds. So this would just kind of be a boost to that or an addition to that.
Okay.
Commissioner Desmond.
I'd like to understand two things. One is, are there other urban growth areas where this could apply in the county? And the other question is, how does what the county is doing dovetail with policy at the cities?
Okay, so other urban growth areas, as far as outside city limits, we've got 7 city urban growth areas, but the cities do not generally extend public water and sewer outside their city limits anymore. So, the density therefore is 1 dwelling per 10 acres on, a well and septic. And the idea there is that, you don't want this suburban type development that kind of forecloses urban development once water and sewer, public water and sewer become available, once they annex and that type of thing. So, as far as in the urban growth areas of the cities, that's a tough one before annexation. The county's got 3 urban growth areas. We've got this one, Birch Bay, and then we've got Cherry Point, which is industrial. Then we have Columbia Valley. And I seem to recall, I think the committee, this work group kicked around Columbia Valley, but it was so far out, such a long drive, to jobs and services and commercial that it was decided not to, pursue additional density up there.
Commissioner Masseri.
I'm just want to make sure that, Matt, did you address the question of what are the cities doing about this same concept? Do cities have similar policies in place?
So Bellingham does have a similar program for the Lake Whatcom watershed. So there the fee is $5,000 per additional dwelling unit. And I think for a number of years, they didn't really get any takers on the program, and then property increased in value. And so now they've had some developers utilize that program. They've got some funding that goes along with their other main funding sources to remove development rights from the Lake Whatcom watershed. I have not heard anything similar in the 6 small cities.
Okay, now go ahead, Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. Commissioner Mayberry was discussing about how the programs currently or historically has functioned. And I think that's why this is being slightly changed. They've changed the name of it and they're adding some of these different provisions because in the past, they just couldn't find the 1-to-1 where somebody currently wanted to build and somebody was currently willing to sell. And so they're trying to just create a fund and administer it in a different way. Is that correct?
There's multiple things going on here. One is what's historically been called the Purchase of Development Right or PDR program, which is now called the Conservation Easement Program. So that's always been a program where there's a county tax, the conservation futures tax, county gets every year, and then they apply for matching funds from the federal government and from the state government. And with those funds, they go out, they ask for applicants, people who want to, let's say you got a 40-acre parcel out in rural 5-acre, you get 8 lots out of it, and they've got a house on it. Maybe they sell 7 of those development rights to the county, and so that property can no longer be developed. It has to be farmed or kept in forestry or natural resource or whatever. So that's one thing. Another different program is the Transfer of Development Rights program, where I think you were talking about, you purchase a development right from somebody who's in the Lake Whatcom watershed, so they can't build it anymore, and you build it in the city of Bellingham or in the urban growth area, let's say. And that program has had a few takers. It's been on the books for a long time, but really hasn't worked very well. And so that's what this committee, this work group said, we can keep that in place because there's some development rights out there, but we want to try something different. And that something different is the density credit program. So it's kind of trying to get at a similar thing. You can increase density in an urban area. Instead of buying a development right from somebody in the Lake Whatcom watershed or wherever, you just throw money in the pot and that goes to this other PDR or conservation easement program. So for developers, it's probably, you don't have to go out and hunt down somebody who's got one of these things or negotiate the price. You just throw money in the pot. County goes off and does its thing and purchases development rights from the applicants that it gets. So there's kind of different programs going on here that are tied together or related.
Commissioners, taking hands up, what would you like to do? Commissioner Desmond.
The only thing that I feel a little bit strange about is the price. It's an arbitrary mechanism to determine the price. And I have no insight about what the price should be. And I wonder, at some point in the future, will we have a better way of discovering what the right price is for this allowance?
Well, one way, yeah.
I mean, but there's also the process of ongoing discovery, you know, like we'll do something here and then maybe it'll be something that'll have to be revisited.
Right.
But no, not maybe. For sure it will be revisited. But the question is, do we have any wisdom right now that can, at hand, that can help figure out what the right pricing mechanism would be?
Well, that is a good and difficult question. I guess the right price is the price that works, you know, for people to use the program. So this $4,000 per unit price was adopted by the County Council in 2017. I think it was the Ag Advisory Committee made that no, I'm sorry, the County PDR Oversight Committee had made that recommendation in 2017. And the County Council adopted that into the fee schedule in, I think it was 2017. Hasn't been used yet. But at that time, there was some information that in Colorado, they had this program, you know, earlier that they had charged $3,000 per unit. Bellingham had on the books $5,000 per unit. And, you know, again, that was slow on the uptake, Bellingham 5,000, but now it's getting more traction. So I think you're right. It's a process of discovery. We'll see if this is used or not. If it's not used, you know, that may be something to revisit. For accessory dwelling units, the $8 per square foot, which would be $4,000 for a 500 square foot bump up, is not on the book. So that would be something that the County Council would, you know, have to put in the fee schedule. But that was also recommended by this PDR TDR multi-stakeholder work group.
So you'll have to come back to the Planning Commission with the new price, if there's a price.
Well, fees are normally just County Council, so that's
okay.
Yeah.
So you can make a change to the pricing pretty quickly then.
Yeah.
I have no further question.
Commissioner Mayberry.
I make a motion that we recommend to the council to adopt this amendment along with the findings of fact.
I'll second.
Sari beat me. Sorry.
Don't be so greedy, Stephen.
All right, it's just my nature.
So we have a motion and a second to adopt this proposal along with the findings of fact. Is there more discussion on this? Tammy, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Desmani,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayberry,
Yes.
Commissioner McClendon,
Yes.
Commissioner Masseri,
Yes.
Commissioner Barton.
Yes.
Okay, that's 8-0 carries.
All right, thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we are on to unfinished business, new business. there any unfinished business, new business? Commissioner McClendon?
I'm just curious, what's up next month, next meeting? Do we know?
Well, before Matt gets away from us, can you help us with that at all, Matt?
Yeah, so we're going to be addressing temporary homeless facilities. So this is something that the county council has adopted a series of interim ordinances on. And so we'll be looking at, Title 20, you never call them permanent, but, regulations in the standard Title 20 zoning code.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Commissioner McClendon, do you wish to speak some more? Oh, there we go. I see your hand went down. Seeing no other hands, is everybody ready to go home? Actually, you're home. So, okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good job.